You need to hear this because most people never see it coming. The exact moment you stopped going after them, something shifted on their side immediately. Not in a calm or neutral way, but in a way that feels unsettling deep inside. At first, it does not look like much from the outside. They may act normal, continue routines, even pretend nothing changed. But internally, something starts to echo. A space opens up where your attention used to be. And that space feels strange, almost heavy. They cannot explain it clearly, but they feel it. It is not relief. It is not peace. It is a kind of quiet disturbance they were never prepared for. When you stop chasing, your absence does not stay empty in their mind. It turns into a reflection. It starts showing them things they avoided noticing before. The sense of being in control, the comfort of your attention, the quiet power they thought they had over your focus. All of that suddenly feels unstable. And this is where confusion begins. They start to feel restless for no clear reason. Thoughts come and go without control. They try to ignore it during the day, but at night it gets louder. Stay with this, because this part is where most people misunderstand everything. It is not just missing you, it is facing themselves through your silence. And that is not easy to sit with. What follows next is even more intense inside their mind. Your absence starts to act like a trigger for emotions they never organized properly. At first, there is confusion, then frustration, then a strange mix of emotions they cannot separate. Anger shows up, but so does fear. Guilt slips in quietly too, and all of it overlaps. They begin replaying moments in their head over and over again. Small conversations, small reactions, even things that once seemed meaningless suddenly feel important. Their mind starts searching for patterns, trying to understand what went wrong or where things shifted. Because the mind hates uncertainty more than almost anything else, it tries to fill the gaps with explanations, even if those explanations are not fully true. They may start imagining your life moving on without them, smiling, laughing, living freely. And that thought creates a deeper reaction than expected. It is not only about loss, it is about losing control of the emotional space they thought they occupied. This is where inner tension builds. One part of them wants to reach out, another part resists, and in between those two, confusion grows stronger. Stay with this part, because this is where emotional pressure becomes silent but powerful. And here is what makes it even more complicated for them. Absence is harder to process than clear rejection. Rejection has limits, it has definition, it gives the mind something fixed to accept. But absence feels unfinished. It leaves open space, and that open space keeps getting filled with thoughts. They start questioning themselves without fully realizing it. Did they miss something important? Did they act too quickly? Did they lose something they did not fully understand at the time? These questions do not come all at once. They appear slowly and repeat in cycles. That repetition creates pressure inside their thinking. They begin to remember more details than before, not because those moments changed, but because their attention to you has changed. Even small things start to feel meaningful. A delayed reply, a quiet moment, a look that was not fully understood at the time. Everything gets reprocessed in their mind. And when clarity does not come, the mind starts building its own version of events just to feel some control again. That is when emotional restlessness increases. They may feel pulled toward reaching out, checking, or finding some way to reconnect just to reduce the uncertainty inside. Not always planned, sometimes sudden, because unresolved emotions rarely stay still, and this is where the silence you created stops being just silence. It becomes something they keep returning to again and again, even when they try not to. Deep inside, they are dealing with a fear they cannot fully control. A quiet worry grows in them that you might be gone for good, not temporarily, but completely out of reach. And this is not something they think through in a calm way. It rises from a deeper place, something instinctive, something older than logic. The part of the mind that reacts first, that reaches, that demands answers fast. And here is where things start to shift in a troubling way for them. Their inner world begins forming reactions without waiting for clear thought. They may tell themselves they should fix it, or that they need to get your attention back, or that they must somehow restore control again. And sometimes it goes even further, turning into a quiet need to make you respond, to make you feel what they are feeling. Because when pride feels shaken, normal limits between right and wrong start to blur. What once looked calm on the outside slowly starts to fall apart. The image they show others begins to crack. The reasons they used to explain everything no longer feel strong enough. And this is where emotions start hitting all at once, without order, without balance. Want, jealousy, shame, confusion, all mixed together in a way that becomes hard to carry. Stay with this, because this is where the shift becomes real. They begin moving between two opposite states of mind. One side still wants your attention badly, almost urgently. The other side feels afraid of that same need, like it exposes something they do not want to accept. So they swing between reaching out and pulling back, between wanting closeness and rejecting it in the same breath. And here is the strange part. You did not do anything dramatic. You simply stopped chasing. But that small change creates a deep reaction inside them. It wakes up parts of their thinking they usually keep buried, the parts that feel uncertain, unprotected, even exposed. They try to push these feelings away during the day, but they return in quiet moments, late at night, in silence, in pauses. And slowly, those hidden thoughts become louder than expected. The idea of losing you fully starts to feel real to them, not just as a thought, but as a possibility they cannot ignore. And when that possibility settles in, their mind starts creating different scenarios just to cope with it. Some are about getting you back. Some are about regaining control. Some even come from frustration they do not fully understand. Keep watching this pattern because it does not stay stable for long. The longer the distance stays, the more their attention begins to sharpen on you. They start noticing things they ignored before: your confidence, your independence, the way your life continues without slowing down. And each detail feels heavier than it should. Because now it is not just observation, it becomes comparison inside their mind. They start questioning their own decisions quietly. Did they misunderstand you? Did they underestimate you? Did they lose something they did not fully value at the time? These thoughts do not come in order. They repeat in cycles, again and again, and with repetition, pressure builds. The mind dislikes uncertainty, so it tries to close the gap with explanations, even if they are not fully true. This is where inner tension grows stronger. They feel pulled toward reaching out, but also held back by pride. They want clarity, but fear what clarity might reveal. And in that in-between space, emotional pressure rises without sound. It does not look dramatic from the outside, but inside it feels constant, like something pressing, something unresolved, something that refuses to settle, and that is where the real storm begins. They start fearing their own emotions about wanting you. There is a strong wish for connection, but at the same time they step back from how intense that need feels inside them. And this is the moment where their inner world begins to speak more honestly. It quietly tells them they still want you, but not in the same way things used to be. Something has changed. They feel exposed, like parts of them are now visible that they used to hide easily. And that feeling creates discomfort. The protective layer they once relied on does not work the same anymore. It feels weaker, thinner, less stable. And what follows cannot really be stopped once it begins. The emotional pressure opens up like a slow storm. They might still try to reach you in different ways, sometimes small, sometimes sudden, but the energy behind it is not the same as before. It is no longer simple or controlled, because now they feel something has been lost. The comfort of control, the ease of predictability, the sense that things would always respond the way they expected. Stay with this, because this shift is deeper than it looks. This is the truth many people never want to face clearly. You were never something they could fully direct or hold in place. You were never something they could simply keep under control. And when you stepped back and stopped chasing, you placed them in front of a very uncomfortable reflection. Not a reflection of you, but of themselves. Every hidden doubt, every silent fear, every thought they avoided for a long time starts appearing in that space. And it does not soften for them. It feels direct. It feels raw. They begin to notice things they once ignored or pushed aside. Moments where they overlooked value, times they acted too quickly, or situations where they assumed too much. Now those memories do not feel neutral anymore. They carry weight. And that weight is not about you alone. It is about how they now see themselves. Their pride, their assumptions, their inner defenses all begin to feel unstable. And that creates internal pressure that is hard to ignore. Because this is no longer about maintaining an image, it becomes about facing what is actually there underneath it. And here is the quiet power in your silence. It did not force anything through action or confrontation. It created awareness simply by stepping away. No one can make another person truly see themselves while staying in the same loop of chasing and reacting. Real understanding only appears when distance is present, when the pattern breaks, when the usual response no longer continues. That is when the mind is forced to sit with itself. Now they are left with that space. Some people react with resistance, some with anger, some try to restore what they feel slipping away, and some simply feel overwhelmed by everything rising at once. But none of them remain exactly the same. Something inside shifts for all of them, even if they do not admit it, because silence removes distraction and leaves only reflection. And that reflection can feel intense when it is finally seen without filters. You are no longer in the role they expected you to stay in. And that change alone forces awareness they were not prepared for. And here is where it becomes most real for them. In that quiet space, they start feeling something they cannot easily explain. A mix of longing and discomfort, pull and resistance, memory and regret, all overlapping. They think about reaching out, then stop themselves, then think again. It becomes a loop inside their mind that does not settle easily. And through all of it, one truth slowly rises without being spoken. They were never fully in control of the emotional space they thought they had. And now that realization sits heavily in their awareness. Your absence does what words never could. It removes noise and reveals clarity. It shows them the parts of themselves they avoided for a long time. And in that stillness, they finally face something they kept running from. Not just loss, but understanding. And the final thought they cannot easily escape is simple. What they thought they had control over was never truly theirs. And now, in your absence, they are left alone with that realization, looking directly at themselves without anything left to hide behind. They start fearing their own emotions about wanting you. There is a strong pull toward connection, but at the same time, they pull away from how intense that need feels inside. And this is where their inner world begins to speak more clearly, almost like it can no longer stay quiet. It tells them they still want you, but not in the way things used to be. Something has changed in how they feel, and they can sense it. They feel exposed in a way they cannot easily explain, like parts of them are now visible that they used to hide without effort. The protective layer they relied on before does not feel strong anymore. It feels weaker, unstable, like it cannot fully hold their emotions in place. And what comes next is something they cannot fully stop once it begins. The emotional pressure opens slowly, like a building storm. They may still try to reach you in different ways, sometimes subtle, sometimes sudden, but the energy behind it is no longer the same as before. It is no longer controlled or predictable, because now they feel a loss of control, and that realization alone changes everything. Stay with this, because this shift is deeper than it first appears. This is the truth many people never fully face. You were never something they could truly control or direct. You were never something they could simply keep within their emotional reach whenever they wanted. And when you stepped back and stopped chasing, you placed them in front of a reflection they could not avoid. Not a reflection of you, but a reflection of themselves. Every hidden doubt, every small insecurity, every thought they avoided for a long time starts rising in that silence. And it does not come gently. It feels direct, sharp, and honest. They begin to notice things they once ignored, moments where they misunderstood, times where they assumed too much, situations where they took things for granted. Now those memories carry weight. Not because the past changed, but because their awareness of it has changed. And this creates pressure inside them. Their pride, their assumptions, their inner defenses all begin to feel unstable. Because this is no longer about keeping an image alive, it becomes about facing what is actually underneath that image. And that is never comfortable for the mind that relied on control. And here is the quiet power in your silence. It did not force reactions through action or pressure. It created awareness simply by no longer participating in the old pattern. No one can make another person truly see themselves while the cycle of chasing and responding continues. Real awareness appears only when the pattern breaks, when the usual emotional loop disappears. That is when the mind is left alone with itself. And in that space, everything starts to surface. Some people react with resistance, some with anger, some with confusion, and some with a strong urge to regain what feels lost. But none of them stay unchanged. Something shifts inside all of them, even if they do not admit it openly, because silence removes distraction and leaves only reflection. And that reflection can feel intense when it is finally seen without filters. You are no longer in the role they expected you to stay in. And that change alone forces them to see things differently, even if they do not understand it yet. And this is where it becomes most real for them. In that quiet space, emotions start mixing in ways they cannot easily separate. Want and fear, memory and regret, pull and resistance, all overlapping at the same time. They think about reaching out, then stop themselves, then think again. It becomes a cycle that does not settle. And slowly, one realization starts forming under all of it. The emotional space they believed they controlled was never fully theirs. And now that realization sits heavily in their awareness. Your absence does what words never manage to do. It removes noise and forces clarity. It shows them parts of themselves they avoided for a long time. And in that stillness, they are left facing something they cannot easily turn away from. Not just loss, but understanding. And the thought that stays with them is simple but heavy. What they thought they controlled was never truly under their control. They start fearing their own emotions about wanting you. There is still that strong pull toward connection, but at the same time they pull back because the intensity of it feels too real inside them. It is like something inside them is waking up that they cannot fully shut down anymore. And this is where their inner world begins to speak more clearly, almost like it is no longer asking for permission. It quietly tells them the truth they try to ignore. That they still want you, but not in the old, familiar way. Something has shifted, and they can feel it even if they do not understand it. They feel exposed in a way they cannot explain, like the parts of them they kept hidden are now slowly becoming visible. The protection they once relied on does not feel strong anymore. It feels thin, unstable, and not enough to hold their emotions in place. And what follows cannot be fully controlled once it starts. The pressure builds quietly, like a storm forming inside without sound. They may still try to reach out in different ways, sometimes small, sometimes sudden, but the energy behind it is no longer stable. It is not the same calm control they thought they had before. Now it is mixed with uncertainty, fear, and confusion. Stay with this, because this shift is deeper than it first appears. This is the truth many people never fully accept. You were never something they could truly direct or hold in place the way they assumed. You were never something that stayed available on command. And when you stepped back and stopped chasing, you placed them in front of a reflection they did not prepare for. Not a reflection of you, but of themselves. In that silence, everything they avoided begins to rise slowly. Small doubts, hidden insecurities, forgotten moments, and unspoken thoughts all start coming forward. And it does not feel gentle to them. It feels direct, almost unavoidable. They begin to notice things they once overlooked without a second thought. Moments where they misunderstood. Times where they assumed too much. Situations where they took your presence for granted. Now those same memories carry weight, like they are being seen for the first time with clearer eyes. Not because the past changed, but because their awareness of it has changed. And that shift creates pressure inside their thinking. Their pride, their assumptions, their emotional defenses all start to feel less stable. Because this is no longer about keeping an image alive in their mind. It becomes about facing what has always been underneath it, without distraction. And here is the quiet power inside your silence. It did not force reactions through pressure or effort. It created awareness simply by stepping out of the pattern. No chasing, no responding in the same old loop. And when that loop breaks, the mind is left alone with itself. That is where everything starts to surface. Real thoughts, uncomfortable realizations, emotional contradictions they used to avoid. Some react with resistance, some with frustration, some with a strong urge to regain control, and some with silence that feels heavier than words. But none of them remain exactly the same after it. Something inside shifts, even if they never say it out loud. Because silence removes distraction and leaves only reflection. And reflection is never soft when someone is not ready for it. It shows them parts of themselves they usually avoid looking at, and you are no longer in the role they expected you to stay in. That alone changes the entire emotional structure they built around you, even if they do not fully understand it yet. And this is where it becomes even more intense inside them. In that quiet space, emotions no longer stay separated. Everything starts blending together. Want and fear, memory and regret, attraction and resistance all overlapping at once. They think about reaching out, then stop. then think again, then hesitate again. It becomes a loop that does not resolve. And slowly, something heavier begins to form under all of it. A realization they did not expect. That the emotional control they thought existed was never fully in their hands. And now that idea sits in their awareness, quietly but firmly. Your absence does something no words ever managed to do. It removes noise and forces honesty. It shows them the parts of themselves they avoided for a long time. And in that stillness, they are left facing something they cannot easily escape. Not just loss, but self-recognition. And the thought that stays behind is simple but unsettling. What they believed they controlled was never truly under control at all.